All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. So this one's going to be, what would you do in this situation? I'm going to give you a couple of examples of situations that I was in while I was involved in my addiction. And I'll tell you what I did in these situations, but I want to know, what would you do if you have never been locked up? Your opinion might be different than somebody that was locked up. Or if you've never been involved in the drug game, your opinion may be different as well. So, no right and wrong answers. Drop a comment and let me know what you would do. Okay, so if you're new to the channel, in the late 80s, I became addicted to illegal narcotics. And I would go on to be addicted for the next 15 years or so, leading me to jails and prisons. At one point, I was on probation in 3 different counties at the same time: Los Angeles, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties. Eventually, I would get clean from the drugs, and on August the 9th, 2004, I became clean permanently, I guess you would say. I have 21 years sober now, so the channel ultimately is about recovery from addiction. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe, hit the like button, drop a comment, share the video. It really helps to grow the channel. And make sure you hit that notification bell so that anytime I drop a new video or I go live, you will be informed. Okay, so the first story takes us to Anaheim, Orange County. And I was dealing down there, well, not firsthand dealing. I had a couple of locations where people were dealing for me. And basically I was the courier, and I was coming and dropping off product for other people to sell. They were running for me, in essence. And one spot, they were moving pretty decent weight. The other spot, not so much, but ultimately I made some connections with some folks down there. And one of these people, we'll call him Bird for the story. He was a very large black gentleman, and he had a propensity for violence. So that was perfect for what I was doing, to have someone like that on my team, to where, you know, if there was an issue, he was quick to take care of it. If somebody needed to be taxed because they weren't paying, he was quick to take care of that kind of stuff. Good dude. I liked him a lot. And, you know, he was the muscle, if you will. And the main spot that we had in Anaheim, like, he was kind of like the doorman there. Like, if he didn't want you to come in, you weren't coming in. And like, we grew to have a really good relationship. Now, one thing I learned early on in the drug dealing portion of my life was not necessarily just drug dealing, but in committing crimes. You know, you had to choose your crimes wisely if you were able to. And people that had 2 strikes, California has a 3 strikes law. Let me explain that real quick. So basically, if you get a violent felony, that's 1 strike. Then it's easier to get the 2nd strike and the 3rd strike. What it was set to be originally was 3 violent felonies, you strike out 25 to life, minimum. Okay? They would go on to change it to where a petty theft could be a strike. So if you were a 2-striker, you know, you were looking at a lot of time if you got in trouble again. So the general rule of thumb was, I didn't mess with 2-strikers, at least not directly. Well, after, you know, a couple of years of doing business down there, I found out Bird was a 2-striker. And, you know, typically if I would find out somebody had 2 strikes, I'd cut them off immediately and redivert them somewhere else. You know, like if they were spending good money and that sort of stuff or some sort of a good asset, then I would send them to someone else, like, hey, check it out, get it from so-and-so. And I'd make some sort of an excuse to distance myself. And in the instance of Bird, I found this out really late. Like, we had been doing business for quite a while. We knew each other really well. And nobody knew where I lived or anything like that. They just knew us from the IE. And they're all OC guys. So I come to find out that he was a two-striker, and I said, wow, this is an interesting situation, because if that house gets hit and he goes down and they try to strike him out, typically, I'm not saying he would have done this, but typically someone with two strikes is a lot more likely to roll over than somebody that doesn't have anything at all, because now, your possession for sales charge ultimately could strike you out, and where, the guy that's running the house may be looking at a couple of years max for, the amount of weight that was being moved in that place. Now you're looking at 3 strikes and a lot more likely to give up information. Now, I'm not saying that Bird ever did that or anything of the sort. He ended up being solid to the end. But, I continued to mess with him. And, the question I have is, what would you do knowing that in that situation? Would you have cut him off? Would you have continued to mess with him and just rolled the dice and took the chance? It's hard to say. So that's my first scenario. Now, my second scenario takes us to LA County Jail. And what I will say is, this really reinforces what I say about choosing your company wisely. You know what I mean? Because, somebody in that situation could very well roll, just like somebody that's never been in trouble could roll. You know what I mean? So some people followed that convict ideology, I guess you would say, and took their licks. We never got busted together, so there was never that opportunity for that to happen. But dude was solid. I'm sorry, I'm getting off track. So the next story takes us to LA County Jail. And this one could be a little more iffy in some people's eyes, but I'm in intake. Okay. If you've ever been through IRC and LA County Jail, it is a mess. It takes forever. It takes minimum 12 hours to get processed in. If you're lucky, you might get a bag lunch or 2 along the way. And, people are coming down, people are drunk, a lot of fights and stuff like that in the holding tanks. And you get moved from one holding tank to another in this process. Well, I'm in one holding tank, and this one kind of goes back, if you've seen the story I did about getting jumped in LA County Jail, these guys that were from 18th Street, and shout out to 18th Street. Okay, so I had got jumped by these guys previously. And basically they came in, 4 of them together, and, kind of went ham in there, asking everybody where they're from and stuff. And, I told them, I'm from San Bernardino, and one of them said, F San Bernardino, and I said, F you, just on an impulse, knee-jerk reaction, and the hand came from over here, bam, and they were on me, right? So I get pulled out. Deputy tells me, he says, this was like in the last processes of intake. Deputy tells me there is a black cell and there's a Southsider and a white cell. You had a problem in the Southsider and white cell. Where do you want to go? Now, I knew I was potentially going to prison, so I had to follow code and take myself back into that Southsider and white cell. And, they kind of gave me the nod. Like I told in the previous story, you can go check that previous story out. But so now I'm back in the tank, and they're still funneling people into these tanks. I guess once the tank was full, then they were going to take us upstairs and get us housed. This other white guy comes in, and he had a ring on, a gold ring. And the 18th Street guys picked up on it right away, and they were like, hey, come up off that ring, Wood. And I'm like, oh man, are we going to go round two here? Because it was me, another Wood, and then this Wood that just rolled up in here. And so I'm just kind of peeping the scene to see what dude's going to do. Because if dude's going to fight for his ring, then we're all going to fight. And, dude came off very weak. I can, in a certain way, I can sympathize with it because, there were those four, plus there were other Southsiders in the holding cell. So he knew we were way outnumbered, or he was way outnumbered. It's probably the way he was looking at it. And he was telling him, no, my mom gave me this ring and all this stuff. What I think he should have done is just took flight, honestly, and then we all would have been rumbling. But he didn't do that, and he perceived himself in a very weak way, trying to ration with these guys. And there was no rationing with these guys. They wanted the ring. And, he basically gave the ring up. And I stood down because the way I was taught growing up, in regards to doing time and stuff, if someone isn't willing to fight for themselves, why am I going to fight for you? Okay? So, had he took flight, like I would have jumped in there and went for round two and probably would have ended up in the hospital. Who knows? I don't know, or who knows, but, the thing is, he wasn't willing to fight for his. Now, in a general population setting, I will say, I don't think it would have gone down that way. I think we would have kicked it off. But then again, I don't know, because how am I going to have your back if you don't even have your own back? You know what I mean? So those are the two scenarios I present to you guys today. What would you do in those situations? Would you have preemptively struck for him, even though he wasn't willing to do it himself, and run the risk of getting jumped while he stands there and watches and still gives the ring up anyways? Or would you have done the same thing? Now, we didn't end up in the same housing unit, so it was basically a dead issue at that point. Had we ended up in the same housing unit, I think I would have brought that to someone's attention, just to see how that would have played out, because I wouldn't want to not say something, and then if something happened, he didn't, follow suit with the car, basically. So drop a comment down below and let me know what you would do. If you were hanging around somebody that was a two-striker and doing dirt and committing crimes, would you cut them off if you found out they were a two-striker? Or would you continue to rock with them and run the risk of being told on ultimately? I'm not saying all two-strikers are that way, but I think it definitely raises the chances that they are going to say something looking at 25 to life. So, like I said, I don't think all two-strikers are that way. Some people are just straight soldiers, and it is what it is, But, and then if you were in that holding tank, would you have stood by and not done anything? Or would you have pushed an issue, At the time, it was like one of the first times I'd been through LA County Jail, so I wasn't exactly sure on what the protocol was, if I was supposed to just rush or let it play out. But I let it play out, and like I said, dude wasn't willing to fight for himself, so I wasn't going to fight for him. If they would have put their hands on him, then I would have got involved, but they didn't touch the guy, you know what I mean? They just took the ring from him, basically. So, what would you have done, though? Drop a comment down below. Like I said, if you're new to the channel and you enjoy this sort of content, be sure to subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. Share the video. It helps to grow the channel. We're at about 2,750 subs now, so thank you guys. I appreciate that. Also hit that notification bell so that when I drop a new video or I go live, you will be informed and you can hop on when you're ready. Anyways, family, fitness, and freedom are the things that allowed me to get my life together and achieve sobriety, and they can help you as well. Remember, it's about the company that you keep. If you're hanging around a bunch of people that are using, you know what it is. So anyways, I hope everybody's week is off to a great start. I'll try to get some more content out later in the week, and I'll be live this weekend, so be on the lookout for that as well. Make sure you hit that notification bell so that when I do go live, you'll be notified and you can be a part of the conversation. So don't look at the mountain, just start climbing.